What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG down there on the YouTube.com. We like magic. Today is the big day. It's the first official for realsies day of Eldritch Moon spoilers from the mothership at wizards.com, and they didn't disappoint. I don't know how hastily I want to say that, but as far as the volume of cards that we got 20 new cards today. I don't want to waste too much time. We got 3 new mechanics. Let's jump all the way into it. The first thing I want to talk about is these 3 new mechanics and all the cards that got spoiled with those mechanics, because some of these are pretty good, some of these are polarizing. We'll just put it that way. Some people love it, some people hate it. And we'll talk about actually the biggest one and the most polarizing first, the meld mechanic. This is basically fusion from Dragon Ball Z, and I'm pretty sure other games have done something akin to this as well. And I'll let you know how I feel about meld after I give you this example card right here. First of all, you've got Midnight Scavengers. This is 4 and a black for a 3/3 human rogue, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to your hand. Not too bad in limited environments, right? You've also got Graph Rats to go along with it. It's just a 2 mana 2/1, that's 1 and a black, for a 2/1 rat with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you both own and control Graph Rats and a creature named Midnight Scavengers, exile them, then meld them into Chittering Host. A Chittering Host is a 5/6 Eldrazi horror with haste and menace, and when it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain menace until end of turn. Well, in just a second, I'll go over sort of a basic FAQ about the meld mechanic, but first, for just a moment, not long, I want to talk about this card. Again, it looks really, really good in limited environments. All the disparate pieces are decent in a sealed deck especially, but even in draft, sometimes a 2 mana, 2 power guy in black isn't bad at all. And then the 5 mana guy that gets you a thing back from your graveyard is not terrible either, especially on a 3/3 body, so the pieces are okay in limited environments. And then it becomes this huge thing that buffs your entire team. So, I mean, some budget mono black aggro deck or something in constructed environments that probably isn't great, but that enter the battlefield trigger on the meld creature itself is really kind of good. It's not bad at all. So, pretty decent card and not a bad way to showcase this mechanic. Here's that quick FAQ I was talking about. I just want to touch a couple of bases real quick and clear some things up about meld and how it works. First of all, if 2 creatures are melded into 1 creature and that creature leaves the battlefield for any reason, it's bounced, it's exiled, it goes to the graveyard, it splits back into the 2 creatures that molded together to form it. That's important. That's important too with exile, things that say Eldrazi Displacer, that exile a thing for a turn and it comes back at the, immediately or at the end of the turn, for instance. There's a card that does that coming up here. Then both creatures will come back unmelded. So that's important to remember. Eldrazi Displacer only gets a little bit better. Something else to point out is that you have to both own and control both creatures. That's important because you can't steal their guy that melds with one of your dudes and meld them together. It doesn't work because you have to both own and control both creatures. Well, those cards are sort of a basic example of how the meld mechanic works, I'm going to move on into some really good examples of how the meld mechanic works. I think that Wizards knew that some players would not necessarily like this mechanic, and so they spoiled very early some examples of incredibly powerful cards with this mechanic. So let's look at both of these, and I'll look at the disparate pieces of both of these first. So really, we're looking at something like 6 cards in just these 2 entries here, but you'll know what I'm talking about. First thing I want to look at is Hanwire Battlements. Well, Hanwire Battlements is a land. It's got tap to add Colorless to your mana pool, or you can pay a red and tap it to have target creature gain haste until end of turn, or you can pay 3 and 2 red and tap it, that's 5 and tap it. If you both own and control Hanwire Battlements and a creature named Hanwire Garrison, exile them, then meld them into Hanwire the Writhing Township. Now, I'll get to Township in just a second, but I want to talk about this card and the card that melds with briefly. First of all, Battlements. I'll get to Garrison in just a second, but Battlements is actually not bad on its own, and neither is Garrison, but Battlements is pretty darn good on its own. You're going to play it in the mono-red Eldrazi deck. You might play it in mono-red Tokens, which is actually, both of those are decks that are on the fringes right now, and this card and all associated cards really, really help it out a lot. It can help you play Eldrazi, that's cool. It can help you displace things, that's cool. You can give creatures haste, that's not bad either. And it transforms into a huge Eldrazi thing that swings for tokens. So all of that is really good. You would put this in decks anyway, I would say. So I really like Battlements. And let's talk about Garrison for a second. Mr. Garrison is 2 and a red for a 2/3 human soldier, and whenever Hanwire Garrison attacks, You put 2 1/1 red human creature tokens onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Well, hello, Goblin Rabblemaster 2.0. That's exactly what this looks like to me, and it's got a really relevant creature type in this standard. That's awesome. I mean, it's a 3-mana guy that swings for 4 power, split among 3 creatures. That can be really good. I really like Halmar Garrison as just sort of a good red mid-range creature, or maybe a finisher for aggro decks, very top of their curve. There's a lot to like about Halmar Garrison. I actually think this card is slightly busted, to be honest with you. And if you have both of these, they transform into Hanwar the Wrathing Township. We've covered this card, but just in case you haven't seen it yet, it's a legendary Eldrazi Ooze with Trample and Haste. It's a 7/4, and whenever it attacks, you put 2 3/2 colorless Eldrazi Horror creature tokens onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. So it's sort of like a souped-up version of Garrison. This card looks really good. Once melded together, it's especially dumb, and you can do it, fairly early. You can do it turn 6 on average, so if you get your drops. So that seems like a very powerful play right there. There was one more set of cards with the meld mechanic spoiled today, and I think it's the most exciting from a story standpoint, and definitely the most exciting as far as like the best single card we've seen spoiled today, I think, is within this batch of cards. So let's talk about these 3 things real quick. I think that they're all pretty good, but one is especially amazing. First, though, I want to talk about Bruna. This is Bruna the Fading Light. She's 7 mana. That's 5 and 2 white. For a 5/7 legendary angel horror. Love that creature type. And she has, when you cast Bruna the Fading Light, you may return target angel or human creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and she has flying and vigilance. I just want to talk about this card real quick because that's sort of how I've been doing it this video. Bruna seems pretty okay. Not to say she's bad or anything. I really like that cast trigger. I wish it was an ETB trigger. That'd be amazing. But even as a cast trigger, it helps you get a lot of value out of that 7 mana. That's pretty good. But I don't think it's anywhere near as good as this card. This is Gisela, the Broken Blade, and she is dumb. This is 4 mana. That's 2 and 2 white. For a 4/3 flying first strike lifelink with, at the beginning of your end step, if you both own and control Gisela and Bruna, exile them, then meld them into Brisela, Voice of Nightmares. Before I talk about Brisela, I'll talk about Gisela for a second, because Gisela, I think, is the best card spoiled all day, far and away, by a lot. This card looks amazing to me, and a lot of people are like, oh, it's just Smothering Abomination stats, 4 mana, 4/3 flyer, whatever. No, this card's crazy. First of all, lifelink, obviously very good on this card. It blanks Hangerback Walker token boards in the same way that, say, Kalidas will blank mono white aggro boards and Bank Company boards. In that, sure, if they want to swing in or whatever, they can, but you're gaining 4 and you're killing one of their tokens, so it just completely blanks them. This also blocks and kills Ujutai and survives. It blocks and kills Avacyn and survives. So lots of really good things about this card right here in the format. I just think it's an insane deal by itself, even if you aren't playing Bruna. This card is fan-freaking-tastic, and she looks almost exactly like Lightning from FF13. And say what you want about that game, but Lightning's awesome. She has 3 different abilities, and they're all insanely relevant. But let's talk about Brisela for a second. Sure, the name to me is dumb. We're using, again, Dragon Ball Z naming conventions here, like Go Tanks. Just jam the 2 names together and get Brisela. Voice of Nightmares sounds kind of cool, though. This is a legendary Eldrazi Angel. It's a 9/10 flying first strike vigilance lifelink, so jam all the abilities together of the first 2 creatures. And your opponents can't cast spells with converted mana cost 3 or less, which is actually really relevant, especially in this standard, where most removal that can hit this is going to cost 3 or less. You got Ruinous Path, Anguished Unmaking, and everything under those 2 cards cannot kill this. That's actually really important. And they can't cast things like, any of the creatures in Bank Company without actually casting Collected Company. So that's also very important. They can cast almost no cards in the entire deck, other than Collected Company and sometimes Ojutai's Command, if you can get this thing out. But it'll take forever to get out against those decks, because you have to have the 7 mana to cast the lady, so Bruna. So it'll take forever. I'm not sure that it's on the level as far as that's concerned. But that line of text is very important. My main concern is it too much work to get Brisela in the first place? Probably. I don't know that Bruna is going to see widespread standard play, but I can tell you that Gisela is, and she is what I'm most excited about as far as these 3 cards. So that's the meld mechanic right there. We've only seen the 3 cards with it so far, but I've never been a fan in card games of abilities that require you to have a set of specific cards, you know, like named a thing. Like if you have a card named this and a card named that, you can do the thing. I'm just not a big fan of that type of mechanic, really, usually. You know, when I first saw that uncommon creature, that common creature, I forget. But when I first saw that black creature, I was like, Mel, this, I don't know, man, I don't know. Seems kind of dumb. But as soon as I saw, you know, the red card and the angels, I was a little bit more on board because these are obviously very powerful cards that are impactful. And here's the catch. Here's the important thing. The two good, quote-unquote good, Mel cards that I've spoiled today, or that we've seen today at least, both have components that are good by themselves. I think that's very important to get players on board with this mechanic. You know, I can't just play two substandard cards and hope that I get a good card, because I can only play 4 of any copy of a card in my deck. So, you know, you have to make the cards good in and of themselves to make this mechanic worth playing. Most importantly to me, how do you guys feel about it? You know, I've looked at forum postings and things, you know, comments on other message boards, and people seem to be split from what I can tell so far. But I want to know how all of you feel. You know, is this cool or is it stupid? We finally get to move on to some other freaking mechanics, and the other 2 mechanics spoiled today I actually think are really kind of good. I like these mechanics a lot, and I'll start with the one that I like the most, and that's the emerge mechanic. I think this has a lot of potential to be a very good mechanic. So let me show you the one card with emerge that was spoiled today. Here's Wretched Griff. It's 7 mana, that's 7 generic, but we'll talk about the cost in a second. For a 3/4 flyer with, whenever you cast Wretched Griff, draw a card. Now, the cast trigger, not enter the battlefield. It's got emerge, the new emerge mechanic, 6. That's 5 and a blue. It's basically an alternate cost. When you may cast this spell by sacrificing a creature and paying the emerge cost reduced by that creature's converted mana cost. I really, really like this mechanic because countless decks in the last few years have shown that sacrificing a creature can be made into a very powerful effect. And we got a lot of stuff that manipulates the graveyard right now. We got Delirium 2 that wants the graveyard to be full. So I really like a lot about Wretched Griff. I love that it's a common and could affect Pauper. I like that it sort of reminds me of Mole Drifter. So I do like this card a good bit. I'm not really sure how much standard playability it has, but it's a very good example of showing us what emerge is. So I like the flavor too of this mechanic. It's obviously, if you think about it, it's obviously based off of Alien, the movie. You know, they're busting out of these things. You know, we'll see a Griff later that's sort of, you know, uninspiring. He's a Windrake, but he's a Hippogriff. This is also a Hippogriff, and it's obviously meant to be, it bursts forth from the other Griff. The third and final mechanic that was spoiled today was Escalade. This is sort of a pseudo kicker type thing that allows you to pick more than one mode on a modal card. Here's an example right here. Here's Blessed Alliance. I actually think this card looks kind of good too. This is 2 mana, that's 1 and a white for an instant with Escalate 2. Now it's modal and it's got 3 different modes on it, but in this case you can choose one of the modes for the casting cost of the card. You can pay 2 mana, choose a mode. But with Escalate, you can pay that extra mana, in this case 2 generic mana, to choose more modes. You can keep doing this until you've chosen every mode, if you have the mana for it. You can choose as many modes as you like, as long as you have the mana for it. Now, in this case, you get to choose 1 or more. The first mode is that target player gains 4 life. The second mode is that you can untap up to 2 target creatures. The third mode is that target opponent sacrifices an attacking creature. This is obviously a really good limited combat trick, especially if you can get all 3 modes and then tap to your guys, block with them, you know, make them sacrifice a guy and gain 4. Like, that's a blowout combat trick, obviously. And so is the other card that we saw spoiled with Escalade. While I'm talking about it, I might as well show it to you. That other card is Borrowed Malevolence. This is even more of just an obviously decent limited combat trick. It's probably not going to see any standard play, but it could be a blowout in limited. It's just 1 black mana, and you choose one of the modes. Either target creature gets +1/+1, or target creature gets -1/-1. But you can escalate for 2 colorless mana and do both of those things. Now the escalate mechanic looks really, really good too. Like, there could be some really, really interesting cards with this mechanic, and I like modal cards in the first place. I like having more than one choice, and if you have the mana, pick extra modes. That just seems like that's a pretty obvious way to design modal cards. And I think it's going to be really fun and versatile. So we'll see how this mechanic plays out. Well, not only did Wizards show us the new mechanics and some cool cards and stuff, but they're also showing some love to the older mechanics, the mechanics that were in Shadows of Innistrad. We're expanding on those. This is just sort of a confirmation that those mechanics will be in this set. Starting with Madness. This card right here is Chilling Grasp. It's 2 and a blue for an instant, and you tap up to 2 target creatures. Those creatures don't untap during their next, the controller's next untap step. So that's basically a freeze effect, and it has Madness 3 and a blue. Again, I think that a lot of these were just confirmation that these mechanics will carry over into this set. Especially this, because this is not a particularly exciting card. It does look like a pretty good, again, limited piece, like in draft or in sealed. This looks like a very fine piece. If you happen to be running some things that discard your cards, this could work well. I hate that the Madness is 4 mana and the actual cost to play the spell is 3. I hate Madness cards that cost more if you Madness them. That's not what we want to be doing. So we really need to see more with Madness besides just this. I really hope that they step up how good Madness is in this set. We're counting on you, Wizards, and this just does not get us there. Another returning mechanic that they showed us a card for is Delirium, and this is actually, I could get a little bit more excited about this card right here. This is Gnarlroot Dryad. It's just a green mana for a 1/1 Dryad Horror with Death Touch, and it has Delirium. And when you have Delirium, it gets +2/+2. Now, so you get basically a 1 mana 3/3 Death Touch as long as you have Delirium. Now this is a little bit more exciting, especially for people that want Delirium to be, competitive, because it's not quite competitive right now. But this looks like a pretty interesting card here. You either spend the first turn playing this, and then later on it gets much better. Turn 4, it'll get much better. Or you can get Delirium, use your first 2 or 3 turns getting Delirium, and then turn 4, you play this and something else that's, relevant with Delirium. You can squeeze it in on turn 3 or 4 after you've activated and gotten Delirium. This helps you set up in the early game, clogs up the board, sort of makes them think twice about swinging in with their better creatures, and really helps you bide your time and get your Delirium on turn 4 or 5. I do like the card. I don't know how competitive it actually is, but time will tell, and I think that this probably sees some play. And the last returning mechanic is Transform. We have to have at least, one card with Transform to confirm that that it's in the set. And the card they gave us is really, really neat, you guys. This is Cryptolith Fragment is what they've called it. It is just a 3 mana artifact, and it enters the battlefield tapped. Boo to that. This card would be much better if it didn't enter the battlefield tapped. But anyway, you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. That's awesome. And each player loses 1 life. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if each player has 10 or less life, you transform Cryptolith Fragment. It transforms into Aurora of Emrakul, and that is a creature, an Eldrazi Reflection. It's a 1/4 flying Death Touch. With whenever Aurora of Emrakul attacks, each opponent loses 3 life. Well, this card does a lot of interesting stuff, right? A really cool card right here. Before it's transformed, it'll be a mana fixer, any color that you like, that's cool. It'll also grind down not only yours, obviously, but your opponent's life total. That's pretty awesome. Flying Death Touch creatures are really, really good creatures in limited environments especially. And it's offensive because when you swing in it, you're guaranteed to deal 3 damage to them. So that's good too. I like this card. I'm not really sure it has the legs for constructed play, especially outside of EDH. But I wouldn't be surprised if it showed up. I would not. I'm not saying it will, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody made something out of this card. There were a few other cards spoiled today that didn't have anything to do with new or returning mechanics. And some of these are exciting, starting with Long Road Home. I really enjoy what this card's trying to do right now in the standard. And it's actually not bad in other formats. This is 2 mana, that's 1 and a white for an instant, another one of those. And it has exile target creature. At the beginning of the next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. A little bit to talk about with this card. People are comparing this to just a one-time Eldrazi Displacer that gives the creature a counter. It is that, but it's also pseudo-removal for a turn. That's not bad. It allows you to get in attacks. That's pretty good. And if they swing in with a huge guy, you can exile it for that turn. It's basically a fog in that case. That's cool. You can use it on your own guys, obviously, to get enter the battlefield triggers and a +1/+1 counter on a guy. So it's got multiple uses, and it's instant speed, and it's easy to cast. Just 2 mana, and only 1 of it's colored. So like an awful lot about this card right now in Standard. Here's another card that they spoiled today that has nothing to do really with the mechanics or anything, but it's an interesting card too. This is Cemetery Recruitment. It is 2 mana, that's 1 and a black. It's a sorcery, and you return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. If it's a zombie card, you draw a card. Now in limited environments, again, I think this is really good. They've really shown us a little bit of a preview of what the limited environment may be like in this set, so that's important to know. But this, again, looks good in draft, especially, you know, if you're drafting the zombie deck. Here's another thing. This is Dawn Griffin right here. It's just a Windrake. You know, it costs 3, 2 and a white in this case, for a 2/2 flyer, and it's vanilla other than that. This is just, you know, again, preview of the draft environment. The creatures like this in limited are always good. Play them, you know, just play these creatures. Hi, I'm just going to break in for a second. Future dev here, Wizards. While I was editing this, Wizards actually spoiled another card that I'm pretty super excited about, actually. This is Unsubstantiate right here. It's a blue and a colorless, just 2 mana for an instant speed spell here. What you do is you return target spell or creature to its owner's hand. That's awesome. It's not remand. You know, I'm pretty sure people are probably going to be like, this is remand. It doesn't draw you the card. That's half of what makes remand so good. But this has more versatility than something like remand. You know, we get to, it's a great tempo play, return something to their hand that's attacking, or protect one of our own guys. But I think the real attraction here is that it's basically a 2 mana counterspell. The only thing we have that's anywhere near like that is Clash of Wills, and it's not a terrible card, but people have been asking for a 2 mana counterspell in the format for a couple of standard rotations at this point, and we haven't really gotten a very, very good one. This isn't perfect or anything. I'm not saying that, but people do like cards like Remand. Great tempo play. And in a control deck, you know, remember that Magic is a game of turns, especially for a deck like a control deck that just wants to control the first 3, 4, 5 turns of the game and then turn the corner and start becoming offensive, you know. So something like this can really, in the early game, help those decks just go an extra turn, a little deeper into the game. And another thing to remember is that if you return their spell to their hand on their second turn, it's entirely likely that turn 3, turn 4, they have better plays anyway. So the card that they played on the second turn, they may not play again until turn 5 or 6. That means that you just got really, really good value out of this pseudo counterspell. So really, really like this thing. The only thing I could see making it, you know, not suck, but definitely a little less impactful is the amount of cast triggers in the format. We got a lot of things that when you cast them, you do a thing before they even resolve. But with counterspells and things like this, an effective counterspell that targets a spell while that spell is on the stack, they'll still get the cast triggers. That makes it a little not great or as great, but still really, really cool looking tempo play right here. Probably, I mean, right there with Reflector Mage in like best tempo plays in the format from what I can tell. Certain decks are going to like this, control decks especially, and it's basically an effective 2 mana counterspell with a crazy amount of versatility. Flexibility is key here. Really, really like this card. The last card spoiled today, and it was the most recent one too, you know, it was the couple hours after all the others, is Thalia's Lancers. Let me show you this. This is 5 mana, that's 3 and 2 white for a 4/4 first strike. With when Thalia's Lancers enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a legendary card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. A couple of things that are neat to point out about this. First of all, it says legendary card, not legendary creature card. You can go get any legendary thing in your deck. That's pretty cool. But also, this will help you get your pieces for melding, at least in limited. I'm not really sure if this card sees standard play. 5 mana for a 4/4 is not great. The first strike helps a little bit, but not, I don't think, enough. And tutoring up a legend is obviously good, don't get me wrong. And once you've got 5 mana, you can play darn near anything, you know, at that point in standard. So that's pretty good too. I'm just not really sure how relevant the card's going to ultimately be in standard. I could be proven wrong, don't get me, you know, obviously I could be wrong on that. But I'm just not seeing that this is of an incredibly high power level, although tutoring up is something is always good. There's plenty of things this could be good in. As far as EDH is concerned, but for standard, I'm not sure that I'm seeing it. Okay, I think we made it through the first day of spoiler season. Nearly 20 cards were spoiled today. We got a bunch of new mechanics and a lot of different things to talk about. So let me know how you feel about all of these down there in the comments section. Now that we know what's going on, let me know how you want these mechanics to pan out. Maybe some possible cards with these mechanics that you want. That's always fun to read your suggestions for cards in the comments section. So do that. Like the video if you enjoyed the content. That helps out a crazy amount. And it just makes sense. Like it if you like it. And then sub if you want to get the rest of these spoilers that are coming up soon, because they will be. Spoiler season has officially begun now, and we'll be getting a bunch of spoilers in rapid succession. So do all the things that you're supposed to do on YouTube, and I'll see you guys later. I'm Deb from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.